Welcome to the second of 4 presentations on the subject of marketing and branding in this workshop. This second portion is called Understanding the Consumer Mind. Trends, consumer behavior, at least their psychology that leads to their behavior. So let's begin with this gentleman right here. If you are familiar with the TV show Mad Men, this is Don Draper. Now, Don Draper, he's a fictional character. However, he is influenced, or he is inspired, rather, by a real person who is Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays, if you're not familiar with him, is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, world-renowned psychologist. Now, the thing is, Edward Bernays, he's what we would today consider a publicist, right? And now, just to kind of give you an understanding of his story, take a look at this. Mr. Bernays was one time reached out to by the Publishing Association. They asked him, hey, Mr. Bernays, soon millions of Americans will be coming home from the war. This is World War I. We want them to buy books. Is there a way that you can help us, right? Now, here's a philosophy. Rising tide lifts all ships. And so his thing was, I'm not going to help you sell books, but understand that where there are bookshelves, there will be books. And so one of the things that he did was he reached out to and somehow managed to convince developers and contractors to add bookshelves to their to people's living spaces. And just to kind of give you an understanding, right? Like, let's see here. I'm just going to pull this over if I don't pull any cables, but like right there, right? This like bookshelves being built into the walls, right? This is it was a novel concept, right? And the whole point of having bookshelves built into the structure and building of whatever it is that an individual is working on, the whole point was so that people will buy books. Nobody's going to invite people to a home with empty bookshelves. And what ended up happening was, over the years, book sales skyrocketed. Not because people are necessarily reading books, but because they're shelves, and so they got to put books on the shelves. Now, that was consider this an introduction of who and the kind of thinking that Edward Bernays has. Now, he's also the individual who coined the term public relations. The government came to him and he asked, hey, you know what? Can you help us do propaganda? He's like, hey, first thing you want to do, stop calling it propaganda. At the time, propaganda was very, communist. We're Americans. Freedom. Yeah. And so his whole thing was, call it public relations instead. It's more politically correct. So again, this is the kind of individual in terms of the kind of mindset and thinking that he has. One of his clients and his claim to fame was Lucky Strike cigarettes. Now, Lucky Strike is popular in the TV show Mad Men, but if you haven't seen the TV show Mad Men, then just understand that I don't know if they're still around, but they were popular back then. Now, Lucky Strike, smoking was clear. It was an image that was associated with, smoking was, at the time, an image that was associated with soldiers in the trenches, in wartime, rough and rugged. And their whole thing was, how do we get people, or rather, how do we get women to start smoking? And so their first approach was, why don't we go after the vanity of women, right? The vanity being, well, research showed that one of the side effects of nicotine was that it curbed appetite. And so, as you'll notice here, the whole thing was, it's like, well, instead of reaching for a sweet, reach for a Lucky Strike instead, right? Now, did these ads work? Not well, in the sense that did it help sell cigarettes? Sure. But it wasn't something that was door busting kind of thing, right? It wasn't like with the book sales, right? Where put bookshelves into buildings and every publisher benefits from that. And so his thing was, well, we need to find a trend. What is a rising trend? And the rising trend at the time, and still is, women's rights. And he said, okay, how about this? What if we were to sponsor a civil rights event, right? Where we're going to get people, basically a march followed by a rally. And in that rally, we're going to tell people to raise their torches of freedom. It's going to be a march. And so, and this is actually photos from the actual event. And keep in mind, this is the 1920s, right? It looks like the roaring 20s, people with top hats and canes and like the hats that they have. So now here's the thing. It wasn't enough that they put on an event. They put on the event and then they reached out to the media and press and they said, hey, there's going to be a women's rights march. Women are going to be smoking in public. And so he reached out to the media and they had a field day, right? Now, the question though is, did all of this attention that they got, did it work? And the reality is within the decade, smoking among women went up 5 to 18%. Now, just to kind of give you an idea, that is a rising tide that lifted all the ships in the cigarette and tobacco industry to get on the bandwagon to start advertising to women. And you'll notice multiple brands, whether it was Virginia Slims, Marlboro, Philip Morris, all of these guys, they came in and started advertising to women because now it was less about the utility of smoking, which initially the whole point was, hey, if you smoke cigarettes, then you're gonna stay skinny. But instead, now it became an identity. This is where branding is extremely popular, not popular, but powerful. Is if you attach what it is that you're doing to an identity. Some of the top brands in the world do this. And so now here's the thing. Edward Bernays said, if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, it is now possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without them even knowing it. And so now this fundamentally comes down to the idea of be loved or hated, but never tolerated. And there's a formula to this. The mind control formula is you got to find what's trending, okay? And get clear on what is the controversial issue. What are the things that people are opinionated about? What do they polarize about? And then contribute a value-based, authentic position and try to see where the irony is in all of that. Now, I'm going to give you a case study here. It's a real-life case study. You may or may not be familiar with this, but the hijabi in Playboy. Now, here's the story. So the headline that you hear is Noor Tagouri becomes the first woman to wear hijab on Playboy. And the magazine hails as the badass activist with a passion of demanding change, right? People put it out there. This was a clear polarizing event, right? Here's a woman, and here, I mean, going back to the formula, right? So in the formula, you got to find what's trending, right? In the sense of women's rights. Again, same macro trend. Controversy, right? The idea of a woman who wears hijab is on Playboy, right? Now, she herself has a value-based authentic position in the sense that she wanted to be like, hey, you know what? These people who read this magazine, they would never otherwise necessarily be seeing or hearing the opinion or voice of a Muslim woman. But the irony is the hijab on in like a woman who's covered on a magazine that's known for showing women who are not covered. And so now here's a timeline, right? The timeline is this: October 12th, 2015. Playboy as a magazine goes safe for work and they decide that they're going to end nude photos. And this is now, after decades of lying, you can now legitimately say you read Playboy for the articles. That was the quote that people kind of pulled out. Now, this is October of 2015. Fast forward maybe 11 months, almost a year, right? Now, Playboy needs to get attention. Okay, just because you made a change, right, doesn't mean that people are going to pay attention. So they need to they sought irony, okay, and they figured, let's see where we can get. Now, they reached out to different women because what Playboy, if previously they were about women being uncovered, let's find the exact opposite, which is women who are covered, and feature them in the magazine. And so, which fundamentally is ironic in terms of what their reputation is. And so the first person that they approached was Amani al-Khattabi, right? Now, she is a publicist and an author. She's released a book, Muslim Girl, and they had approached her and she had turned it down. And she basically said, I was approached for the interview at the same time, but eventually made the decision to turn it down. Okay. Now, later, activist Linda Sarsour was approached, right? And she goes, I was contacted and I declined the interview with them because for generations, they've made billions of dollars off the objectification of women. And I know some will say that they no longer show nudity, but that should not be the benchmark. And I couldn't shake that off. And so Ana Delgazio, who did the interview, she said that she's the one who actually worked freelance for Playboy. And a few months ago, the deputy editor reached out and said, what they're doing is a renegade theme issue for October and was wondering if I knew any possible quote unquote renegades who might work for the particular issue. Now, as Playboy rebrands itself to assert itself and say, we're not just about peddling flesh or showing young girls in more stereotypically compromised positions, that renegades come in all forms. It's not just about being attractive. If you look at the array of people they choose, it really runs the gamut. I think Playboy is trying to reassert itself as a more than just sexy magazine, but also one of substance. This is from the lady who did the interview. Now, I think it would be great, and it would be quite entertaining, in fact. Take a moment with a significant other, a family member, and take a moment to discuss, right? What do you think about this, right? What do you feel, what are the justifications? What are the pros and cons of Playboy doing this? Now let's move on to the actual interview that CNN did with Noor Tagouri, who was eventually the one who got featured on Playboy. Take a look at this.
A Muslim American woman has been creating quite a stir for her appearance in Playboy magazine, not for what she doesn't wear, but instead for what she does.
Journalist Noor Tagouri is profiled in Playboy's Renegade series wearing a hijab. The 22-year-old is the first woman to appear in the magazine wearing the traditional Muslim head covering.
And Noor Tagouri joins us now from Washington, D.C. Noor, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You knew that by agreeing to appear in Playboy magazine, a publication that has for decades sold images of nude or semi-nude women, that you'd be courting controversy. So what was your motivation here? Why do it?
Well, first and foremost, Playboy has undergone a rebranding, so they haven't published nudity in a very long time. And if they still did, I wouldn't have agreed to do the interview. But I kind of saw it like I saw every other publication I've done interviews with, like Marie Claire, Washington Post. But of course, this was something that I had to sit down and think about a lot more. I spoke to my family, friends, mentors, and then we decided that it would be important to share my message with this audience. And of course, because this was a part of the Renegade series, all about game changers and rule breakers, I kind of felt like I fit right in, and my message fit right in.
Two female journalists took strong exception to your decision to do the interview with Playboy. I want you to respond to Asama Udin and Ines Yunus. In an article for the Washington Post, they said this, that the Playboy interview is a step too far. It represents Muslim women as purportedly represented by Tagouri, not on their own terms, but in Playboy's terms, and in the process mocks the very ethics and morals the hijab is religiously intended to reflect. These women make the point, and I want you to respond, that if one believes that the hijab is a symbol of a connection to God, then it's kind of in conflict with everything that Playboy stands for. How do you see it? Do you see a conflict?
So the thing with that statement is that it makes it seem like everybody's connection to God should be the same. Everyone has their own interpretation and practice of the religion, of how they wear the hijab, of what it means to them. And for someone to say, is it in conflict with Playboy? Here's the thing. If you're going to say, I constantly am talking about the objectification of women, combating the sexualization of women in media today. But me being absolutely myself, wearing what I want, being authentically myself on the front lines of a publication that's known to objectify women, that's breaking that barrier. That's bringing my narrative without sacrificing anything of who I am as a person, what my morals and beliefs are, and bringing my message of light to a place that hasn't had that before. And so we sit there and we talk about the hijab or Muslim women representation in America and around the world, and we sit there and we talk about it to people and platforms and audiences that are already familiar with it, but to bring it to an audience that may have never even heard the story of a Muslim American woman and to share to them what it actually means. This article and this interview wasn't for Muslims to go out and pick up Playboy and start reading it. It was for people who are already reading Playboy to see a fresh face with a fresh message and to kind of test their own way of thought when it comes to what it means to be a Muslim American woman and what they know about us.
Do you think you have been successful in getting your message across, or do you think that has been lost in some way, been lost amidst the noise of controversy?
I think that the controversy obviously is going to add to a certain level of the noise, and that's fine. But the bigger picture and the overall outcome to me was very successful, it was very positive. There were people like Ashton Kutcher sharing the story to millions and millions of his own followers, and for me to have a narrative of a Muslim American woman that people are not used to be shared to a completely new audience and a completely new platform, that was the most important thing. And for me to remain authentically myself the entire time made me feel super comfortable with what I was doing. And so regardless of what the noise is, I think it was really important. And I came out after like about a week later, and I penned a letter to everybody who had been confused or who was very supportive of the interview, and I told them my reasoning behind it. And so many people had reached out to me afterwards and was like, you know, I'm really sorry for the assumptions I made, because what happened was a lot of people saw the headline and they assumed that a Muslim American woman posed nude on the cover of Playboy, and they didn't go any further. In the Middle East and a lot of places overseas, the website itself is banned, so people weren't even able to read the interview. So of course rumors are going to start, and people made assumptions, and things just started spiraling from there. But when people actually got a chance to read the interview, no one ever had a problem with the actual message. And when people read my letter in terms of why I did it, they realized, okay, this is your perspective, and I understand why it was important. Now, whether they agree or not, which a lot of people did agree, and there were people who didn't disagreed, the biggest thing to me was if they were respectfully addressing their opinion or disrespectfully addressing their opinion. I think the controversy started a lot of cyberbullying and harassment and even threats, and that was something that I just have no tolerance for, and so that was the downside.
Yeah, well, we should share with our viewers that your family and friends were very supportive of it, and I'm pleased that you could come on and just give your insight and perspectives. So thank you so much, Noor.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that was October 4th on 2016. Now, fast forward 4 months later, Playboy takes its identity back and puts nudity in the new issue, and they're quoted saying nudity was never the problem because nudity is not a problem. So then the real question now is who benefited? Obviously it was Playboy, right? But what about the individual who was interviewed in the magazine during the brief period in which they were going in a new direction? Of course, she benefited as well. Her career, and she was probably the best match for that brief period in time in which Playboy was going in a different direction in comparison to the other women that were sought out. One was somebody who was a blogger, the other was an activist, whereas she herself is a journalist, and Playboy being a form of journalism and type of publication, it was a match. And she herself, one of the things that she has made a reputation of is, in terms of the work that she does, is talking about human trafficking and sex work and things like that, and bringing attention and aware to it and advocating for women's rights. And it was kind of like a match for her specifically. So in this case, all participants benefited. Now, if they reached out to her today, would she be able to participate? Probably not. But it's just a question of, in a situation like this, it's less about what is right and wrong, and it's a question of attention, right? Who has attention? Who's trying to benefit and grow from that attention? And based on the alignment of goals and whatnot, there might be room for collaboration. So, but at the same time, be aware that this approach that Edward Bernays has used, or rather this approach of public relations, of trend jacking, as they call it, can also be extremely dangerous, right? Because people love controversy. It is one of the elements of that's a force multiplier for newsworthiness. And when it comes to extreme views and addiction to conflict, which essentially is human nature and it tends to stand out, we end up with this guy. And the thing is, his thing is he knows how to stand out. He knows how to zag when everybody else is zigging, right? He positioned himself as a hero for blue-collar nationals. In a world where they cry democracy, he's pushing for something else. Now, when it comes to and also just a case of how this could be used in a way that is questionable, right, is the story of American Apparel. So there's an excellent book that I would highly recommend everybody read. It's called Trust Me, I'm Lying, Confessions of a Media Manipulator by Ryan Holiday, who was the director of marketing for American Apparel. Just to kind of give you an example of the type of trend jacking, Edward Bernays' approach that he took. Like, when it comes to attention, you are being clear on what it is that you stand for, right? Now, sometimes what you stand for is a little bit more fluid, or maybe it's very clear. Now, in the case of American Apparel, one of the things that they did was they hired a porn star, and they had her model for some of their apparel, essentially with the American Apparel brand. All she was wearing was socks, but they photographed her in a way that was not showing anything. And then they placed that advertising on websites that are not safe for work. Now, the director of marketing and his team, they reach out to right-wing media, conservative media, and they said, playing with the same tactic that Edward Bernays did when it came to the Women's Rights March. He goes, look at American Apparel, what are they doing? Like, they're putting out these kinds of lewd advertising. This is horrible. And so the right-wing media gets on it saying how American Apparel is lewd, essentially. And then they reach out to the liberal media and they're like, look at what the right wing is saying. They're encroaching on our freedom of speech. And they basically start hot swapping back and forth until they get a story on mainstream news media. They get a comment on that. They, just based off of $500 worth of banner ads, they were able to basically trade that up for some free attention. Now, for them, getting in that discussion is not about right or wrong. It's about getting people who are either hate them or love them to engage in discord so that they are in the public consciousness. That's what it really comes down to. But as a means of protecting ourselves from this, this is like an X-ray to give you that X-ray vision, and also understand how some aspects of this could be applied in a good way for your business or brand. One thing you got to understand is that you got to be able to count voices, not volume. However, being able to make noise is very effective. Now, there's a story about Ulysses Grant during the Civil War where they were needing to get to a particular checkpoint with their soldiers, but they could hear howling, what sounded like a large pack of wolves. And they were terrified, but they still needed to make that checkpoint. So they moved forward until when they reached the wolves, they found like there was like 2 of them. But the way that they were howling and the way the sound resonance reached them, it sounded like large pack of wolves. And so for them, there wasn't any real present danger. This is an actual thing. It's an actual effect that people are, that happens in media, that happens in real life, where the illusion of the voices and the illusion of what's happening seems even fatal. But until you finally get to the source, the reality is that it's the volume of the voice was really high, but the amount of voices talking about it was actually really low. And so let's just be cognizant of how, you can use this in a way that is extreme, but you can also learn about it in a way that is practical. And in fact, Ryan Holiday, when he published his book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, Confessions of a Media Manipulator, he actually published it as a cautionary warning for people, but people have used it for bad more than good. But I still recommend that you check it out to get a better understanding of how media works, how consumer psychology works. And at the end of the day, just be sure that you, when it comes to your own self, to be counting voices. But the other thing is, how do you increase the volume of your own voice for your own brand or your own vision in a way that is ethical? Still, going back, remember, it's the formula that you want to find what is trending. You want to find what is the controversy or polarizing factors around it, and see what is the value that you can give within that space. Here's an example that's a little less risque. Technology, right? Technology can be pretty boring, right? This is a camera, right? But even amongst cameras, people can find something as simple as a camera. You can find things that are trending. So like you have Panasonic, which is a brand of cameras. You have Canon, which I am recording on right now. And you have Sony. And so for the longest time, Sony was known for making cameras that would overheat, and Canon for the longest time was known for making cameras that take great pictures, but seemingly quote unquote cripple their video capabilities as a means of not cannibalizing their cinema video line. And then whereas Panasonic, they're known for cameras footage that is high resolution and very stable, but their sensor is really small, so it doesn't do very well in low light. And so Canon, what they do, they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to come out with a video. We're going to come out with a camera that is 8K, okay? And so people get really, really excited about it. Now, what ends up happening is that the camera comes out, people get it, and they find that the camera overheats in 8K. Well, if anybody knows anything about cameras, when you stick 8K into a body that's this size, which is relatively small, of course it's going to overheat. That's how technology works. You have all the circuitry. But what they felt was that Canon put this out there and as a result misled folks. But in reality, they never said that you can record unlimited time. Now, again, they are getting on a trend, right? That trend was, we're going to be the first people that make high resolution 8K video that does RAW, that allows you to have a lot of malleability. But the controversy is the fact that, you know what, they didn't state what it was. Now, I'm sure Canon is deliberate about that because they know that people are going to talk about it. That doesn't remove the reality, and nobody's going to deny that they're amongst the best photo cameras in the entire market. At the same time, Sony, recognizing that Canon is zigging in this direction, they zag in the opposite direction. They're like, you know what, we are going to make sure that there's a lot of voices that increase the volume of their product line. And so they reach out to people. They have a lot of folks that use their product. They even fostered and cultivated a community called the Alpha Universe. And essentially anybody that's using their camera, they have, whenever they release a product or release an update, they let them all know, and they basically tell them an embargo in terms of on what date they can publish their content. And as soon as the product drops, boom, you have like hundreds of videos talking about this particular product. And so that's just a method or a way of getting in on a particular trend that people want. And the trend is people like doing digital media. For example, within the space of those who like digital media, the things that people talk about, things that are controversial, things that are trending is, well, how do you get stabilized footage? Or how do I increase my resolution? Or how do I get the camera to focus on the regular, right? These are different things that are trending in terms of what people are talking about within a particular space. So having said that, the workshop here is, what is the genuine value that you can bring, that you add to that which is trending in your space that you're operating in? And if you can answer that, then you can get in on the conversation. And provide real value for people to be able to benefit, and for you to grow your attention base and create content. So that's it for this video. We're going to move on to the third, which is all about branding and focus.